June 6, 1944. What kind of men keep moving forward when the sky itself seems to be screaming, when the ocean spits back the dead, and when every step inland feels like walking straight into something watching you from the dark? And what did those moments reveal that made hardened German soldiers begin to fear the Americans more than anything else on the battlefield? The answer doesn't start with victory, it starts with chaos. Absolute, bone-rattling chaos, as waves of American troops slammed into Normandy during D-Day. Many of them barely trained for the kind of hell waiting on those beaches. Yet something strange unfolded in the hours and days that followed. Something that German reports would later describe with a mix of confusion and dread. These soldiers didn't stop. Not when officers fell, not when radios went silent, not even when medics, yes, medics, became targets and still crawled forward under machine gun fire to drag broken bodies back from the edge. One German machine gunner later wrote that he watched an unarmed American medic run through a storm of bullets, get hit, stand back up, and keep going, as if fear itself had no hold on him, and that image stuck. Because it didn't make sense to men trained to believe fear was universal, predictable, controllable. Yet here was something else, something raw and unexplainable. Fast forward to December 16th, 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge, when the Ardennes forest turned into a frozen nightmare, where American units, surrounded and outnumbered, held positions in temperatures so brutal that rifles froze and wounded men sometimes didn't scream because the cold stole even that from them. And still, small squads held off entire German advances, not because they had superior numbers or even better strategy, but because they refused to break, and that refusal began to feel unnatural to their enemy. There are accounts from German officers describing night encounters where American patrols moved silently through the woods, appearing suddenly out of the fog, striking hard and disappearing just as quickly, leaving behind confusion and a kind of psychological weight that built over time, as if the forest itself had turned against them. One particularly chilling report mentions a German unit finding a forward position abandoned except for a single wounded American soldier who had apparently held the line alone for hours, his weapon overheated, his supplies gone. Yet signs of multiple enemy casualties around him suggested he fought long after any reasonable man would have surrendered. And when they approached, they realized he had died still facing forward, as if waiting for one more wave. Now here's where it gets even darker, because beyond the big battles were classified missions, small, almost forgotten operations where American soldiers were dropped behind enemy lines for reconnaissance, sabotage, or rescue, missions where survival wasn't expected. And in those shadows, stories emerged that blurred the line between courage and something almost haunting. Like the account from March 1945 near the Rhine, where a team sent to destroy a key bridge reportedly vanished for 2 days, only to return with their objective complete but unable or unwilling to fully explain what happened. Except for one line repeated by multiple members: "We weren't alone out there." And while historians debate whether that meant enemy patrols, psychological stress, or something else entirely, the effect on German troops was very real, as whispers spread about American units that seemed to operate beyond normal limits, men who would keep advancing through artillery barrages, who would laugh in moments where laughter made no sense, who would carry their wounded even when it meant certain death, creating a reputation that wasn't just about firepower, but about an unsettling resilience that chipped away at the enemy's confidence. And then there's the medic stories, the ones that hit hardest, because medics weren't supposed to fight, yet they became symbols of something deeper, like the widely documented acts of combat medics during the Italian campaign in 1943 to 1944, who ran into active fire zones again and again, sometimes treating German wounded as well, blurring the lines of enemy and ally in a way that left opposing soldiers stunned, unsure how to process a man who would risk everything not to kill, but to save, even under conditions where mercy felt impossible. One German prisoner later admitted that seeing American medics in action shook him more than any tank or artillery strike, because it suggested a kind of strength that wasn't just physical, but moral, and that kind of strength is hard to fight. But let's not pretend this was all heroic in a clean, cinematic way, because war is never that simple. There were moments of terror that bordered on the grotesque, like nighttime bombardments where the ground itself seemed to breathe from the impact of shells, or the aftermath of close combat, where soldiers described the battlefield as eerily quiet, except for the wind moving through what was left behind, creating a silence that felt heavier than the noise before it. And in those moments, even the toughest soldiers on both sides felt something creeping in, something cold and unsettling that no training could fully prepare them for. Yet through all of this, what forced German forces to reassess their enemy wasn't just American firepower or numbers. It was this unpredictable combination of relentless advance, refusal to surrender, and flashes of humanity in the middle of brutality, creating a psychological edge that grew stronger as the war dragged on, especially in 1945, when American units pushed deeper into Germany itself, encountering fortified positions that should have held longer but often fell faster than expected, partly because the defenders were already worn down by the idea idea that these soldiers just wouldn't quit. And here's the part that sticks with you. The realization that fear in war isn't always about what an enemy can do, but about what they keep doing even after every logical reason to stop has passed. And that's what turned the tide in more ways than one. Because once that idea takes hold, it spreads, it lingers, it changes how every engagement feels, turning each encounter into something heavier, something more uncertain. So as you think about these moments, these dates, these fragments of real history stitched together from reports, letters, and testimonies, ask yourself this: was it just training and strategy that built this reputation? Or was there something else, something harder to define, that made these soldiers push beyond what seemed human? And if you were standing on the other side, watching them come through smoke, snow, and silence without stopping, how long before that fear got into your head too?